How do we best define a good life? What attributes best describe a leader? Perhaps there are as many different definitions as the number of people we ask, but one thing is quite certain. We're able to identify it when we see it in someone, that special something that makes us listen to them when they have something to say, or follow them simply by the way they lead their own lives. Hello, my name is Tim Roach, and welcome to Riverside TV's A Good Life, a series of interviews with men and women who have made a significant impact on the city of Riverside, its people, policies, and profile. Individuals who truly can be said to have lived a good life and become trusted leaders in our community. And now, today on A Good Life. He is universally considered the most important youth advocate in the history of the city of Riverside, California, and quite possibly Southern California's entire Inland Empire. His life of community-driven action has inspired and given hope to generations of youth, regardless of race, color, creed, or socioeconomic background. He grew up in an era of de facto segregation and persistent discrimination, yet lifted his community with a spirit of service, hard work, and a can-do, never-give-up attitude that personifies the man. For his exploits on the field as an athlete and coach, and his many contributions off it, he was inducted into the Riverside Sport Hall of Fame. He worked for 38 years at the Riverside Unified School District, where he retired in 2003 as a district administrator in charge of campus discipline and security. As the parent of elementary school-aged sons in 1965, he was a driving force behind the Riverside School District's voluntary and successful efforts to integrate the district's school system, a story of local, state, and national prominence. He was the founder of the Black Students Union in Riverside area schools in 1968, the Multicultural Council, the Black History Committee in 1979, and Riverside's Black History Parade in 1980, which recently celebrated its 40th anniversary. He and wife Carmen's Adrian Dell and Carmen Roberts Foundation creates and provides cultural activities throughout the year for the city of Riverside. The recipient of numerous awards, honors, and citations, he has sat on any number of local boards, councils, and committees. A loving husband, father, grandfather, dedicated family man, and loyal friend. He is the tireless champion of possibility, the great lion of community engagement. Today, Mr. Dell Roberts, A Good Life. Dell Roberts, welcome, sir, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We'd like to start by asking you, sir, how you would define a good life.
Church, family, friends. It's a good life.
What qualities do you think makes Dell Roberts such a good friend?
I don't know. If I am a good friend, and I hope I am, I guess I like people, you know. I like fun. I have many different things that I like, and consequently different friends fit into different parts of my life. They're in categories of just what I need.
What makes him a good friend is that no matter how much he's accomplished and how much he's achieved, which is so very much, he still will treat you like somehow you're the star and he's not. That's what makes him so great. And you have to sit back and really think, this person's really quite heroic. He's not just some average person. He is a person of great accomplishment, a person who's encouraged people really more than perhaps anybody I've known ever. And yet he's right there. He'll support you to the hilt. You know he has your back. If you have an issue or concern, he's there. You can't ask for a better friend.
Take us back to your childhood, the very beginning.
Well, 1936, I was born in Houston, Texas, in the 3rd Ward, at home. I was named primarily by my aunt, Alberta Thomas, and she named me Adrian Adelbert Glover. My dad's name was Glover.
And you didn't have your dad in your life when you were younger?
No. I enjoyed a young life in Texas. I spent some time there. Then I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and we traversed from Texas to Oklahoma a lot, back and forth. I can remember, I can remember being on trains, and the trains were still segregated.
Talk a bit about your mother and your grandmother.
Well, my mother worked all of her life. Yes, all of life. Even when I was young, I was with my grandmother more than I was with her, and for whatever reason, I lived with my grandmother. My grandmother worked for some rich people in some part of Houston. The one outstanding thing I remember about Danan, when she died of tuberculosis, and I don't know the year, but she had all of her teeth, beautiful white teeth, just a full set of teeth, no dentistry. But that's the way with older people. They have many of those old remedies. They know things. They know things that you think are nothing. They know what they are. They know whether they're greens or whether they're just weeds, et cetera, et cetera.
Your oldest brother, and he was from a different family.
From a different father.
Father, and that was James.
Yes. James Cooper.
And Sonny was his nickname. And he was a significant influence on you as well when you were young.
Oh, definitely. Sonny was naturally my older brother and my idol. Our only disagreements were with him as he grew up and went to service. Then I would wear his clothes, and I was hard on clothes. He was meticulous, but me, been somewhat of a slob. I'd run his shoes over and all that. He'd come back and be really incensed, and sometime he would end up beating up on me, and I'd have to call for my mother to rescue me.
You moved to Riverside in 1945. You're 9 years old. Why Riverside?
My mother married a gentleman named Walter Lott, and I don't know about the courtship or anything, but I know that he was the reason we ended up moving to Riverside.
What was Riverside like?
Oh man, it was heaven to me, I come to Riverside, skies are blue, palm trees waving, pepper trees. I could just stand out there and just enjoy it. And then naturally I made friends with neighborhood kids and really enjoyed it. Riverside is a unique place. I don't think there's another place on the map that is located centrally like Riverside is. Hour and a half you can be in Los Angeles or at the beach. Hour you can be in the snow. Hour you can be in the desert. 3 hours you can be in Las Vegas. I don't think there's another location on the map like that.
You live today not far from the home that you first lived in, which is extraordinary.
10th and Sedgwick, 9th and Sedgwick for a large part of my life. And then I got married and moved to Cottage.
Your story is the story of community. You stay in the same community and you stay in the same neighborhood. What schools did you attend?
I attended Longfellow Elementary School. That's my alma mater. And I went there until I went to University Junior High at the time. And then from there, then I went across town to Poly, which is where RCC is at this particular time.
But as a young boy, you start to earn a wage. You're doing all kinds of odd jobs at an extraordinarily early age. Take us back to some of the first jobs you had.
First jobs, well, the real first jobs I had was cleaning people's houses, washing dishes, babysitting, mopping floors on Saturday morning. I was young. I was very young. I did all that kind of stuff, and then I matriculated into collecting papers, bottles, cans, and I had a route. I would go and ladies would save stuff for me, and I would go down to Bowman's recycling place on 8th Street, and they'd weigh it up and give me money for it.
So you're working as a boy to earn money for the family, the start of a lifelong community servant role. You were quite an athlete at Poly High School. Did the athletic ability come natural to you?
I think so. When I was at Poly, what did I do? I played football, ran track, and swam.
You not only swam, you were a star diver on the team. You not only played football, but you were all county on the line. You were an accomplished athlete. Your athletic success made you quite well known in the East Side neighborhood. You were a mentor to other youths. You were looked up to. Talk about the East Side and the mix of people at that time.
East Side was always a mix, much more so than it is now. But it was a good place to grow up. That was the East Side. It was a community. Park Avenue was a hub. There was restaurants, barbershops, pool halls, and multiples of all of these, eateries, one church on Park Avenue, one church a block away. Lincoln Park was a gathering place for people in the neighborhood. That's where you went. That's where you went for picnics. That's where you went just to eat supper, you know. There was always kids running, playing.
Did you get into any trouble?
Prior to that, I was just right on the edge of major trouble. But in high school, I don't remember any real trouble. I just...
What advice do you have for kids who are on the edge of major trouble?
Well, today it's hard to advise youth. They have a strong mindset, be it right or be it wrong. They have, and I'm being general, they have a lack of respect for adults, for older people, for women, for each other, you know. And don't get me wrong, I advise youth every day, and I advise them to get an education, not so that they can have a degree, but so they could live their life. I advocate for work-related programs there. I'm talking about auto mechanics. I'm talking about electrician, plumbing, carpentering. Those are things vocational. Those are things that be taught in the schools and help some of these kids. Everybody's not meant to go to college, okay? I know some very successful people who did not go to college. But kids grow up now and don't pick up cans and bottles. They don't. They just put their hand out. The parents put it there. They go spend it. They don't know where toilet paper comes from. They don't know where milk comes from. They think milk grows in the icebox. Toilet paper grows on the roll. You know, they don't know. Nobody's teaching them as a whole that particular part of life. And it's dangerous that they grow up. So then they grow up and they think that they have to have a scheme or to hit somebody in the head to get what they want.
During high school, you start working 1951 at Butcher Boy.
Butcher Boy was a good place. It was a family type atmosphere. You could work different hours. And as I grew up, I continued working for them.
You develop a very close relationship with the owners, Harry and Mary Roberts.
They were mom and dad to me. You know, I was a hard worker, and I think they liked that, you know. At one point, I was head of all the hamburger making, and I grind about 5,000 pounds of hamburger a day. We delivered to McDonald's. I used to talk to the brothers that originated McDonald's.
The first McDonald's you delivered to?
On East Street. They sit in a back room in front of this big window, and they just sit back there and chat. And so sometimes I'd stop if I wasn't in too big a hurry, go and talk to them a little bit, just about what was going on. They were just kind of blasé, enjoying life.
It's in high school that you meet Lula, your first wife. Tell us about her, meeting her, a little bit about her.
Well, she lived on 14th Street, and we met and courted, just had lots of wonderful, wonderful times together, you know. We went on eventually and got married, and started to have children. And so rest is history. Had a long life for her. The boys grew up.
You graduate from Poly High School in 55. You go to RCC. You graduate from there with an associate's degree. You mentioned that you're married to Lula. Your first son is born in 1958. You're still working at Butcher Boy. You get active at Lincoln Park again, this time teaching youth weightlifting, physical fitness.
At first, I worked for Park and Rec, and they fought me on it. You know, it's a waste of time. And then whatever president was there hit on a physical fitness thing and said you should have. And all of a sudden, they went from trying to say quit messing with that to buying me weights and benches and stuff. I said, okay, great, and mats. So we went at it, and I trained lots of kids from all different schools, from North, from Poly, from Arlington, from Rubidoux. You know, they all came, and they lifted with me there.
Initially, I met Del Roberts at Lincoln Park Pool. It was a little weightlifting room that they had just off the side of the pool. And here I was, this little, I don't know how old I was, maybe 5 or 6. And so I came in and I'm shy and I'm looking around, and Del says, "Do you want to lift weights? You want to get strong?" And I go, "Yeah, okay." So he sat me down on the bench press and had nothing but just the bar itself. But it worked for me. I was a part of it. I saw these, big, strong guys, and I knew that I could be that now. I knew that if I continued on, I could be that.
This is 1960. The civil rights movement in America starts to pick up steam. It's a time of change. It's starting to happen. Were you active at all in the civil rights movement?
Not really. I was active trying to feed kids. I had opinions, but I just didn't have time to go out. I didn't like politics then. Don't like it now because it's that's a whole nother story. At one point, a group wanted me to run for councilman. What can we do to help persuade you? I said, bring Muhammad Ali to town to talk to my youth. And so I didn't think they would do it. Nevertheless, he came, and I took him around to 5 different high schools, and he got to talk to the kids.
By 1961, you have 3 sons. Talk about your sons.
Great guys. People sometimes say, my kid worked their way through college. My kids worked their way through college. My wife was sick. I had bills. She was suffering from cancer from, 66 to 81 before she died. And all the way she fought cancer. And my boys, they were troopers, At one time, here was my schedule. I worked from 4 to 12 at Butcher Boy, basically. And then from 12 to 3, I was a campus supervisor at Poly. And then from 3 to 6, I was a football coach. And then from 6 to 10, I worked for Park and Recreation with a weightlifting program. And when I got to the coaching part, I would pick the kids up to get them off my wife, and they would be with me.
1965 rolls around. August 1965, we have the Watts riots. Your oldest son, Adrian, is about to start Lowell Elementary School. Just before school starts, in September 1965, the school is burned.
That thing happened. It was horrific. The parents had decided, a group of them, that they weren't going to take it anymore. The school had burned, and they weren't going to build another school there, that they needed something, a relief from all of this. At the particular point, the only elementary school in the area was Irving. Irving was still standing. And so they talked about busing white kids in. And the white parents really kicked up a storm. no way, Jose, you're not busing our kids into the ghetto. So busing out was what happened. And my kids were bused primarily to Pachapa. And at Pachapa, the teachers, some of them, taught around the students. You know, I went visited a classroom one day, and as soon as I entered the class, the level of activity rose. And so the teacher looked at me, and she said, "Those are bus children," meaning they don't know any better, you know. And I call bull on that. So what I did, I went to the office and took my child out of that class, put him in another class. I don't believe in segregation, but here's what I do believe in. I do believe in the community being able to get to their child. Now, some of these people on the east side, few of them, don't have automobiles. So if this child is sick or this child is in trouble, they can't get to them. And that's not good. They can't get to the PTA meetings. The kids can't stay after school and be involved in stuff. So they spend their life on the bus back and forth, which is not good. And they're bused out to 7 different elementary schools off the east side as we speak today.
The Lowell fire sets off a series of events that enables Riverside, California to be one of the first large cities in America to integrate schools without a court order and without violence. But there was angst and harsh conversation.
Well, I'm here, and these parents are really being ugly. Arthur Littleworth was superintendent of schools, I guess, or whatever at that time. He's sitting up there, and he's taking major flack. So, yes, I came to his, that's how we became friends. I came to his defense because I didn't approve of that. And till today, Arthur and I still remain friends, and he remembers that I was there to try to bring some sanity to it and tell him that he was trying to do the best he could under the circumstances.
You mentioned Arthur Littleworth. He's another legendary figure in Riverside. He suffered a stroke in 2008 and is unable to communicate as well as he wants to. But he wanted to send a message to you. He communicated his thoughts to his wife, Peggy, and Peggy read a note from Arthur that we'd like you to see. And if you just look at the monitor here.
Del, this message is for you from Arthur. I can remember well a day when I was president of the Riverside School Board in the turbulent times of the 1960s. It was early morning. I was in bed soundly asleep. The phone rang, waking me. It was Del Roberts. Wow. He was calling me about a racial problem at Poly High School. He said that he would handle it, but he wanted me to be aware of the problem. Early on, we had exchanged phone numbers with each other with the agreement that he would call me directly with anything I should know about the schools and the students. He was my eyes and ears on campus and an invaluable troubleshooter if that was necessary. Del shared my goal in using school integration to bind the Riverside community into one people. The immediate cause of Riverside's integration was the crisis that resulted from the 1965 Watts riots in Los Angeles, the ensuing fire at Lowell School in Riverside, and the subsequent Black students' boycott of the Riverside schools. With dedicated work and prompt action by the school board and with the cooperation of the teachers, a plan was created to integrate the schools. Del Roberts, you helped with this process, and I received more than one phone call from you. Del, you were a strong influence on the youngsters at Poly High School. You kept order, but with a thoughtful and gentle approach. Del, the community, and I thank you for your help in our schools.
Folks like that, your friends, say those things about you.
It makes me feel happy and humble. am proud that I was able to. My thing is that my wife sometimes tells me that I don't know who I know, and I don't really know what I do. I just do it. I enjoy people. I enjoy young people more.
You know, some people have it and some don't. And I don't know that we can often define the it factor about what makes someone approachable, what engenders a sense of confidence in someone. I don't know what the it is. And there's something about him that kids feel, young people feel a level of confidence in his ability to maintain your confidentiality and give you sound, good advice. I don't know what that it factor is, but Dale certainly has it.
Well, I met Dale, I believe, when I first became a judge, and I didn't know at that time that I was actually meeting a legend. But he'll treat you like you're a legend, no matter who you are. I was the first African-American judge. He saw it as an opportunity to introduce a whole lot of people to me, people who wanted to be lawyers, people who wanted hope, so that I could share with them my experience and how I accomplished it. So from the very beginning, he's always thinking of some way he can help somebody else.
You get a job now as a football coach at Poly High School, 1965.
I was minding my own business when Coach Hammersmith recruited me. I coached football at Poly for about 20 years total. I was there through 5 different coaches, 5 different principals. I enjoyed working with kids, and we won some championships. I think coaching, if it's done properly, is one of the greatest teaching tools that there is, even more so than the classroom.
You once famously said, if you're having trouble on campus, bring in a coach.
Yes, yes. Simply because a coach, especially a good coach, he can get in the middle of a crowd and holler at a kid, "Jim!" And Jim will freeze. He'll stop what he's doing. If you take an English teacher out there and she says, "Jim," you know, get out of here. You know, he would, I've seen it.
1968, you're hired full-time at Poly High School. It's called Campus Aide, becomes campus supervisor. Tell us how the job at Poly High School came to be.
Principal Dick Thorstead approached me and said, "I want you to come and work in the office." So I said, "I'll tell you what, if you can match what I make at Butcher Boy, coaching, Park and Rec, and campus supervision, if you can match those, then financially, then I'll do it." So Ray Berry was the superintendent of schools at the particular time, really a sharp man. And he was in the background, I guess, orchestrating this. I said, so, you know, so everything settled down and signed me up, and here we go.
You take the job, you're in charge of discipline at Poly High School. In 1968, you also start the first Black Student Union at Poly High School. Mm-hmm. It will come to spread around the other high schools. Tell us about starting the Black Student Union.
Difficult, because at first the schools looked at it as something that was anti-school. And my big job was to convince them that it was not anti-school, it was pro-school. So I had to convince them that the BSU, what we would do is make the kids understand that this is their school. And I says, if I can get them to buy into this is their school, then they're less likely to tear it up because they have ownership. It was rough. People were against it for various reasons. They thought we were like the Panthers or something, you know. But finally it spread and they got to understand.
Now, it wasn't only the black student you were catering to at Poly High School. You started a multicultural committee.
Council. Uh-huh.
Talk about that for a moment.
I got the bright idea, let's put together a multicultural council. On this multicultural council will be blacks, whites, Chicanos, Chinese, anybody, all ethnicities on this campus, A students, F students, gangbangers, student body presidents, just a multicultural of the whole thing, okay?
In fact, you took many of their children on their first trips away from the neighborhood to appreciate and understand what community is, not only the community they lived in, but other communities as well.
It's because of Dale, actually, was my first trip to Sacramento. It was a United BSU conference in Sacramento, and I was the Southern Region president running for statewide president, and the statewide conference was here in Sacramento. And so I have Dale Roberts to thank for bringing me to my state's capital for the first time.
1970, you're promoted again just 2 years after you're hired. Now you're special assistant to the principal in charge of discipline. You'll be at Poly High School from 70 to 89.
I met Dell years ago in the early 70s, but I had heard about Dell when I was a young man growing up on the east side. And in early 1970s, I was asked to come to coach at Poly High School by the legendary coach Ben Hammersmith. And I started to realize that Dell was special. He was a kind of coach that seemed to get the most out of young men. And I've looking back at Dell and my experience with Dell is that he was sincere. And he was not a phony. He wasn't in it for himself, but to try to make the young man a better person and a better student.
I guess when I really came to know Dale Roberts was when I went to Poly High School in 1971. He saw this kid that was running for sophomore class office that he didn't know. He didn't really have an idea who Craig Goodwin had come out to be, but he just captured me. And I think that from the time that I first started at Poly, that Dale actually became that figure for me that I relied on for almost everything. He saved lives. He made everything possible. That if you wanted to do it and you wanted to work hard enough to do it, you could get it done. It had impact both on me and fortunately on the people that I was talking to.
But at home, Lula is getting sicker.
Started out, she was having a blurred eyesight. A brain mass was displacing the fluid and causing the blurred eyesight. So they went in and removed it. They thought that they should put a plate because now they had removed a large part of her cranium and they wanted to put something in it to protect the brain. It didn't take. The body rejected it. So they had to go back in and remove it. As time goes on, the liver started to grow. They did a biopsy and found out it was cancerous. One day I came home to take her to the hospital. No, I came home to take her to a funeral. And when she stepped up out of our thing, the femur broke. It had been eaten through with cancer. I'm not a doctor, but I said, Doc, check the other leg, And he did, and he said, it's starting to get eaten through too. So he did the other leg. So both legs were done. So by now I'm carrying her to radiation. Took her to the doctor. The doctor on duty at Community Hospital knew me, and he came out after they got her settled in, put his arm around me. And said she won't last through the night. And basically she lasted 5 weeks after her entry in the hospital. I had to take 3 busloads of kids to San Jose. And so, I talked to her when she was, and told her she was good, she knew. She worked with me and the kids. So I went. Came back on a Monday. It was a holiday. So my brother-in-law, Oscar Harper, was with me. We climbed in. Now the kids were all gone. We climbed in the car, started to drive off of Poly campus. And he said, brother-in-law, he says, Lula's gone. It goes back, I guess, to my raising and my mother. There's a strong belief in God, that, hey, whatever it is not pleasant, but it's God's will. And you have to find a way to get through it.
He and his three boys were able to get through it, I think, because they were strong. And they had support from the community, but it was sort of a payback to Del, that because of the way he treated many families in need emotionally, they were paying Del back to get him through that time. I remember that time very distinctly, because he might have to leave practice. But he never carried it on his shoulder. You knew that it bothered him. He knew that he was hurting. You knew that he was lonely. But he was such a strong person within himself, and he passed that on to his boys, his three sons.
In 1981, Lula dies. And through all these difficult times, your focus is not only on your wife and family, but you're still focused on your community. You're still focused on your kids. An extraordinary act of selflessness.
I learned not to say to anybody is, I know how you feel. You don't know diddly, because you don't know what those two people's relationship was. You don't know, I never tell people, I know how you feel.
Amidst all this heartache, you still find the time in 1979 to set up the Black History Committee. You still find the time in 1980 to have the first Black History Parade.
Maybe it was some sort of a therapy for me, to see that these things went. I've been driven by youth a large part of my life. They said, we want to do our own parade. Well, I had been taking them all over to Fontana, to San Bernardino, and so I've always tried to take kids out of the neighborhood, okay? I think there's a world of learning out there.
Mr. Roberts was the guy that you went to when you were in trouble, the guy that the principal sent you to when you were in trouble, and Mr. Roberts connoted trouble. So I don't remember meeting him because I, of course, was never in trouble. But he was the BSU advisor, and so I got active in BSU. I'm not sure if it was my freshman or sophomore year. And so that was my orientation with Dale Roberts. But I knew him because he was the go-to for all things Black Students Union.
Tell us how you got involved with the NAACP in the mid-60s originally.
Well, I was minding my own business. A lady named Barbara said, would you please come and help me with the youth group? Okay, why not? I could do that. So I went to the meeting at the Community Settlement House. The kids were there. She wasn't there, but we went on with the meeting. She never showed up again.
You just took over.
Yeah, no, it took me over. I have a firm belief that any kid, any youth can do better. And I expect them to do better. And I think that they know that I expect them to do better. And whether they do or not, it's in their mind. Because I've had them come back to me and say, thank you, Mr. Roberts. And I said, thank you for what, And they'll explain to me what it was that I didn't even know that I had did.
He's the legend. Just plain and simple, he's a legend. He's a legend because of his care for youth, his care for the community as a whole, but in particular his care for youth. And it seems that everywhere you go, you'll see Del encouraging somebody. He has helped so many people. Every time I'm out, and Del always happens to be there, by the way, whatever community event it is, he's there. And someone will always come up to him and they'll say, yeah, and I want to thank Del Roberts, or they're getting some honor, and they'll say, I want to thank Del Roberts. Or someone will come up and say, yeah, my dad, Del Roberts, and they point to him. I'm thinking, how many kids do you have?
I try to take some of the best qualities of people that I had worked with. And some of those qualities I took from Del, and that I was not going to be a phony. I was going to be up front. the ethnic or color of a student or a player didn't make any difference to me. I was there to try to get the young person through school, and I learned that from Del. Treat them with respect, give them an out, and help them.
If there had to be something said, certainly something said to represent the youth or the black community as a whole, Dale Roberts was generally the guy that was there. He had this credibility because he was the one there talking to the people most of the time.
I respect kids, and I think that for the most part, they return that respect to me.
1987 or so, you meet Carmen, a bright light at the end of the tunnel. Talk about meeting Carmen and what she has represented to you.
Carmen, I don't know what year it was that she came to the Black History Month committee. We got to know each other, good moods, bad moods, disagreements. After a meeting sometime, a gentleman who's a pastor, Reverend Jenkins, who was a school teacher at Poly at the time, he was on the committee, and a good friend of hers, the four of us go to Marie Callender's and have pie after the meetings. I was just happy being single. Well, all this time, my mother was not happy with that, me being a single person. She thought that I should be married. Carmen and I picked up some sort of relationship where, in fact, I would come home from work. I left Poly sometime 9 o'clock at night, and I would call her up, say, let's take a ride on my motorcycle. So she said, okay, I'll put on some jeans, and away we would go. We'd go up Box Spring and come back down. That was good enough for me to kind of loosen up. I called her up and said, hey, how about let's go into a movie? So we went, and it was on after that. And at some point, I told her we should get married. And we did, and I've been blessed.
I met Del on the Black History Month committee for Riverside. I had a friend. His name is Edward Jenkins. And so Jenkins is like, well, you're single and he's single. It's like, okay, and? So we kind of started going to eat pie and dessert after the meetings. Okay, and so that's how this conversation started between Del and I.
I'm thankful to God each day. Some men can't find one good wife, but me to find two good wives in one lifetime is just overwhelming, outstanding. She's smarter than I am, she picks up the slack. I was never against marriage, another marriage, but I did not think that I could find a woman who would put up with people calling me at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, late at night, people coming by, and some of them right now, she won't open the door for them, because they're not very reputable, but they know where I am.
So, beside every great man is a great woman. And Carmen and Dale have always been on a real interesting parallel track in terms of their commitment to Riverside, their commitment to Black history, the Black History Parade, and just all things Riverside oriented. They not only share an amazing love and bond to each other, but they share their life's work. And I don't know many couples that have that opportunity. And Carmen, we tip our hat to you as well for keeping Dale strong and happy and committed to the work that you both now do together.
In 1989, you're promoted again, this time out of Poly High School to district offices to be in charge of discipline, period.
And security.
What was the challenge there? A big position.
I had 64 campus supervisors under my watch, and to get them trained, and that's why I'm not comfortable with what happens now. what I did is every campus supervisor that was hired, I interviewed them, knee to knee. Okay, I want to look in your face. I want you to talk to me. I want to see if you care about kids. If you don't, I'm not going to hire you. And it's not done that way now. I want people who love kids. Because I want to, see, in Riverside, I think all the kids are mine. I don't care what school, what color. I think they're all mine. And I treat them like that.
I think Dell is a man for all people. You know, if whose ever child has a problem, you know, he's going to try to help them. Yeah. People call all the time with issues, you know, school district issues, whatever. And they just want him to try to help them, you know.
Every community, every school, and every student should have a Dale Roberts in their life. You know, let's be clear. I graduated from Poly in 1982. And he and I still have a relationship. I still am impacted and remember the opportunities and life lessons that Dale helped expose me to. Every young person in California, across this country, should have someone in their lives, a trusted, confidant adult that they could go to in times of trouble and despair. And that's what Dale has meant to generations of Riversiders.
The one thing I asked when I started working at Poly was, and they looked at me kind of astounded, like, I want to be able to go to this child's home. And they look at me, why would anybody want to do that? They're thinking. But you don't know a child unless you go to his home. I've taken kids home to be expelled, suspended, and changed my mind because of the home situation. Brought the kid back to school, realized that you got to work with the child himself.
So, what advice do you have for school administration?
People just need to be kind to one another. The adults need to be kind to one another. There's too much stuff that's done for the wrong reasons. Too much placement of the wrong people. Just like I interviewed campus supervisors, people should really seriously interview and not just look at the paperwork or what the computer says or what their degrees are, but look and see if they're a fit for the situation and see if they like kids. If you don't like kids, then you should not be teaching. Children are being hurt by teachers. In my day, there was a teacher that showed film every day. There's no learning in that. Come on.
Now, what message do you have for the youth of Riverside who want to have a bright future?
Obey your parents. Get an education. Do something that you like. I've been fortunate in my life. I never had a job that I didn't like. Some people are not able to do that, and they spend their life hating what they do. Bad for the workplace, bad for the people around them, and bad for them.
You retire in 2003, and yet you've never been busier. The Black History Committee becomes, in essence, the Adrian Dell and Carmen Roberts Foundation.
Well, Carmen's has been, she's been the champion and the head of the organization really forever. I'm the one that has the ideas and spend the money. She's the one that kind of holds the reins on some of that, because I can spend money. I have 3 o'clock in the morning. I have ideas, about different things.
The goals of the foundation are to provide and create cultural activities for the city of Riverside. That's what we do. Also to promote empowering of young women. So that's why one night Dell had a dream about 3 o'clock in the morning and wanted to talk, and I didn't want to talk about this at 3 o'clock in the morning. But he wanted to have a forum for young women so they can, just women, and come and talk, and young women can learn from older women, or older women could be models for younger women and get information from them. So we started doing this maybe about 20, I think it probably started about 20 years ago. So it's coming into the dream that he originally had. So it's been a good journey for the Empowering Young Women's Conference. For the city, I think it would be advantageous for the city to continue some of the things that we're doing. I would hope that some of the activities that we have created continue for the city of Riverside, because they are valuable activities.
She goes, if I have to go on trips, she's gone with me on BSU trips over the weekend with kids, which you always need a woman with you to help handle things. And so she's been highly instrumental. So I'm just blessed to have her.
When he gets something in his mind, he just goes after it. It's like if he gets his teeth into something, it's full force, head on.
1989, 30 years ago, a very well-respected educator in the Inland Empire, the late Joseph E. Riles, a principal at Poly High School during the 1970s, wrote a letter to the editor. And in it, he had this quote about you. "A man can preach a better sermon with his example than his lips. And Del Roberts has, through his example and good works, converted more young people to good citizenship and service to their school and community than any man I know. He is one who has truly made a difference in many lives, and he is certainly one of Riverside's finest citizens." Signed, Joseph E. Ryle, Riverside. Del Roberts, this is what people think of you.
I'm overwhelmed because, like I said, I do what I do. When I get awards, sometimes I just say, why am I getting this award? I enjoyed what I was doing. I've enjoyed.
His legacy is one of encouraging people who maybe thought they couldn't be all they wanted to be. Maybe they couldn't dream of those great dreams that we all want to aspire to, but he told them they could. So when you look at that legacy and you think how many lives he's impacted, and working in the criminal justice system as I have, how many people maybe didn't go that way because Del Roberts told them there was a better way and that they could be whatever they wanted to be. His legacy is tremendous.
A lot of what you trained me in as I came up through the years is still a significant part of my life. The things that I do with my kids and now my grandkids, I sometimes see flashes of Del Roberts and say, that's what he would have said. I don't think he understands the impact that he's had, and that's probably one of his treasures, is not to ever recognize just how great a man that he is, and hopefully will continue to be forever and ever.
There are countless young people in Riverside and beyond whose lives you've touched in a meaningful and profound way. You helped me identify a space for myself where I could learn and grow and thrive. You have, throughout the course of your life, been an amazing son and product of Riverside, and Riverside owes you a great, great deal of thanks.
Del is the kind of guy that I don't know that can ever be replaced because of who he was and who he is in this community. I want you to know, Del, how much I love you and that I care, and how much you've taught me in raising my 7 children. But you've taught me more than I can ever thank you, and I just want to thank you and your family for being there for me. Thanks, Del.
We close by thanking you, first of all. You are universally considered the most important youth advocate in the history of the city of Riverside, and perhaps in all of Southern California's Inland Empire. You have inspired and given hope to generations of youth, regardless of their race, color, creed, or socioeconomic background. You are the tireless champion of possibility. You are, sir, the great lion of community engagement, and it's been our pleasure, and we thank you.
Thank you.
Del Roberts, a good life indeed.
Thank you.